Good morning. I didn't trip coming down. All right. Good morning. Thank you all for your service that you provide to the community. Again, my name is Patrice Ravenscroft. I serve as Executive Director and CEO of Reach Pikes Peak, a local nonprofit. I'm here to present a collaborative proposal to our commissioners this morning on behalf of Reach Pikes Peak, Mount Carmel's Veteran Services, and Tri-Lakes Cares. And we also have Haley Chapin, the Executive Director, in the audience for support today. So poverty is a critical need, as you all know, in El Paso County. A few statistics that we find a little staggering. In El Paso County, a person would need to make $19.62 an hour or work full-time at that rate to afford a two-bedroom home. If they earn minimum wage, they would need to work 77 hours a week. 82,790 individuals, according to Feeding America in El Paso County, are food insecure. And according to the Community Commons, 28.3% of the population is under 200% of the federal poverty level. 36% of households rent their homes, according to the Census Fact Finder. And the United States Interagency Council of Homelessness did a community assessment created in February of 2017 that outlined specific questions on how communities are achieving goals in ending family homelessness. One significant highlight was the imperative need for communities to have resources such as detailed goal-oriented plans, systems, capacity in homeless prevention, and a way to quickly end future experiences of homelessness. So the three collaborative agencies that I mentioned, Reach Pikes Peak, Tri-Lakes Cares, and Mount Carmel Veteran Service Center, put together this proposal to present to you all as a critical solution in the time that we're seeing in El Paso County. Our agency, Reach Pikes Peak, serves over 16,000 low-income individuals a year, and we are non-age and non-zip code restricted. We have a downtown Colorado Springs, Calhan, and Fountain office, so we serve all of El Paso County. Tri-Lakes Cares is vital as they serve 900 residents and distribute over 208,000 pounds of food, and they are one of the only providers serving low-income households in northern El Paso County. And Mount Carmel Veteran Center serves over 4,000 clients since 2016, but they have a specific comprehensive approach that has added homeless prevention and poverty sustainability. So on behalf of our board of directors of the three agencies, we formally would like to request that the commissioners review our funding requests. You all have that in front of you, and it all includes board president signed letters from our agencies. Our request is $150,000, $50,000 per agency to be utilized for immediate emergency homeless prevention and supportive poverty sustainability programs that our agencies provide in El Paso County for household incomes that are below 200% of the federal poverty level. Why is this important? So right now, we have about 80,000 residents that are living and trying to thrive in poverty. So if this funding request is approved, three key things will come out of this from each agency. We'll be able to provide county residents with immediate short-term emergency crisis assistance along with the wraparound poverty sustainability services. We'll be able to provide supportive programs that enhance residents and their ability to stay stable at their current occupation, as well as add career progression. And then it will be able to enhance individuals and foundational home stability through intense budget analysis, goal setting, employment and financial advocacy, transportation assistance, self-sufficiency programs, clothing assistance, food insecurity programs that will feed families immediately, and then give county residents the opportunity to reduce dependency on government programs. So all three agencies can provide critical homeless prevention initiatives right now with client assistance, as well as the wraparound poverty elevation programs. So the three collaborative agencies put this proposal together, and we believe we're vital solutions to mitigating city costs that are associated with residents becoming homeless and coming back to self-sufficiency. And our expertise areas are homeless prevention, poverty eradication and sustainability, military and veteran comprehensive supportive and self-sufficiency programs. So that's just a short version of what's in the proposal. proposal, but there's a full laid out proposal for you all to review and board of, excuse me, I'm like so nervous. And all of our board presidents have signed letters formally to you all, the commissioners, to add this to your funding decisions for 2019. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Don't go away. I'm sure there's going to be some questions.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, great.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so I'm going to ask for clarification. So is this a new proposal you are asking of the county through today's budget process, or is this something that's gone into our maybe CDBG or other areas of the county that we have been looking at over the last several months? And so that might actually be more of a staff question, but or combined. So if you know.
Absolutely. This is a brand new proposal.
Okay, that
considered.
you were about to ask for as we do our process here for the rest of the day. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, hi.
Go ahead. I would.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sherry Cassidy, CFO. I just wanted to be sure that we do have a community investment program, and we have an application for everyone to fill out. Those were actually due Friday. I'm sorry, they were due October 31st, but we haven't reviewed them yet. Have you filled out the application? Okay. If you can get it filled out and turned back in to us tomorrow, then we'll put it in with the rest of them. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Waller.
Thank you. And I have more of a question for you, I hope, here. You mentioned 200% of the federal poverty level 3 or 4 times in your presentation. And so it's a couple of questions related to that. Number one, what sort of makes that the line of demarcation here, the relevant statistical number? And 2, how much money is that for a family of 4?
Right, so that's about, for family 4 is around 25,000 for all 3 agencies. When we were thinking about which families are the most in danger of becoming homeless, it's those the working families that one situation, one medical incident, one critical, what if or life happens, are at the precipice of becoming homeless. So that 200%, they're working, they have a job, career progression is a struggle, but if one incident happens, that's the majority of the people that we're seeing coming into our office that are falling victim to becoming homeless. So the 200 was a really good benchmark for us. It's kind of where we thrive with all 3 elements. People, the chronic homeless is not really where we thrive. We let Salvation Army and Springs Rescue Mission take on those, but 200% of the federal poverty level is a majority of our residents.
And again, 200% is $24,000 for a family of 4?
$25,000, yes.
Wow.
And I can send the AMI and the federal poverty level to go along with the proposal.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Vander, did you have your hand up? Okay. The only other question I have, and I'm glad you showed up today so that you can get into the queue as far as evaluation, so please make sure you fill out that application. Yes. The question is for the city. Have you approached the city with regard to a funding request, and have they agreed to that?
We have, and that's really exciting. The ESG Emergency Solutions Grants were just decided. One of our agencies will be taking on that. It's $40,000 for homeless prevention, which is really great because that would be it's a good timing for that to happen. Same with, let's see, ESG, CDBG, yeah, those are the big ones. So there's not a lot of funding right now. Only 3 agencies received ESG, so we went to the chat meeting 2 weeks ago, and 211 they're getting calls of residents who are suicidal because there's no resources. Almost no agency right now has homeless prevention, rental or mortgage assistance. So we're all kind of patching assistance together. Catholic Charities, can you guys do this? We can do this. It's really bare right now. So yes, we have approached the city for funding.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before I call item number 8, I just want to give an update. Item 8 is essentially we're going to start our markup process where you literally will see numbers and we will start talking about how we're going to balance our budget. But prior to that, I do want to extend an invitation. If there's anybody in the audience that wants to present a funding request for our consideration, and that has not had an opportunity beforehand. Let's do that now. I'll give you a couple minutes to be able to articulate that. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into that. But it would be easier to find out if there was a request now before we start balancing the budget without your consideration. So I will extend that offer right now if there's anybody that wants to approach us. All right, people just want to see math in public. All right, item 8.
Item 8. 8A, 2019 Budget Hearing Number 4, Original Adopted Budget, BOCC Direction on the 2019 Original Adopted Budget. Sherry Cassidy, CFO.
Good morning, Commissioners. I've got a short PowerPoint here to kind of go over where we are, and then we will go right to the spreadsheet. So what I'll go over today is some revenue updates, our reserve strategy, our investment in human capital, what our next steps are, and then the updated roadmap. This is the original projections for sales tax. Back on September 20th, I presented this, and we were around 111.1 million, and my cursor isn't working. There it is. Around 111.1 million. We've refined that number a little bit. We have sales tax figures through August. We're looking at that number now is going to be around 111.4 million. So we've added $300,000 to that estimate. After the elections yesterday or on Tuesday, we did have an item that District 2, right? District 2 did pass a mill levy for the school, so that will reduce our specific ownership tax by an estimated $231,000. So that $300,000 will offset that. Right now, for our 2019, our revised estimate is we have a revised estimate for the 2018 base, and then we also have the hail in there of about $1 million. So the net impact is going to be about $700,000. We're still projecting an increase of 4.5% for 2019. So that'd be an increase of 4.1 million over the 2018 projections. And then we just gave a little chart here for your reference if we need it when we get to the roadmap for how much each 0.25% would increase or decrease our sales tax estimate. Our projected percentages, this is our historical. The upper line is what we actually ended up with on sales tax. The lower line is what we budgeted out in 2017. You can see that we had estimated 7%, but it actually came in a little bit less than that, 5.87. For 2018, we believe it's going to come in at 6.13% when we had estimated 5% there. And then again, in 2019, we're estimating 4.5% just to be conservative. Our sales tax, we've increased the estimate $300,000. Our specific ownership tax due to the District 2 mill levy item is decreased $231,000. And then the public trustee came in with some revised revenue fees. He's got, the foreclosure costs are going down quite a bit. So he's estimating a reduction of $86,000 of revenue that comes back to the county.
Question here, Commissioner Littleton.
Thanks. Sherry, certainly while we understand this is people could spend hours with you, citizens, figuring out how when mill levy increases happen within school districts or other places, it actually reduces the amount that we have to spend. Is there any way in a couple of sentences you could explain how that works? I know that's really asking a large task.
What happens is the specific ownership tax, El Paso County gets a portion of the statewide specific ownership tax, and it's based on you say she knows that
Sorry.
side of it.
This is what I do. So essentially, the specific ownership tax starts out at the clerk and recorder's office at a county level, collected for all the motor vehicle registrations in the county. That is submitted in one pot of money, for lack of better words, to the county treasurer. And then that is distributed out to each entity that assesses a mill levy for property taxes. And so those taxes are used to allocate the specific ownership tax percentage. So as one entity's mill levy increases more than normal population and valuation growth, their portion of the specific ownership tax pot becomes larger, so everyone else's becomes a little bit smaller. And so whenever there's a large increase in a mill levy or a large decrease, every other entity will see an effect on that. Does that answer your question, Commissioner? Thank you.
Commissioner Waller?
That was a great explanation, but it brings up another question to me. So is that allocation statutory? Is it something that we do by rule? How does that distribution get determined?
It is done based on statute. So the specific ownership tax statutes state how that is to be allocated to each entity.
Thanks.
Any other questions on that?
Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Not a question on that topic per se, but on another one. You mentioned you're going to make the prediction for revenue increases of 4.5%, a conservative number for 2019. You may be somewhere through the course of today going through your rationale for picking that number, but I do want to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it's not right now, it doesn't have to be right now, but I do want to hear the rationale for that number. Why not a little higher? Why not a little lower?
I can actually speak to it on this chart here.
Okay.
For historically, back in 2013, when we were recovering, we were estimating 3.75, and then it was coming in at 4.68%. We were still trying to be pretty conservative because we just had the fires and floods, and we weren't sure how that would affect everything. So then we kind of landed at 4% for 2015 and 2016. Well, it came in really, really high, at almost 7% and 8.5%. And then in 2017, then we became a little bit more aggressive because of how the past years had been, and we actually thought that we were going to come in at 7%. Well, it backed off some, and we came in at 5.87% is what we actually landed at in 2017. Because of that, then we backed off on our estimates for 2018, and we had budgeted 5%. We're coming in higher at 6.13%, but sales tax throughout 2018 just seems to have been a little bit sluggish. It hasn't been growing like we've seen it in past years. We do think we'll be at 6.13% above, but again, 1% of that, or about $1 million of that, is we believe from the one-time hail damage. And I was actually, let's see what I have. I actually think we'll probably come in around 5 to 5.5% up in 2018 if you subtract out that $1 million of hail. We do know that some of that seems to be carrying over into 2019. They said that the repair shops are backed up. They've got appointments all the way up to May to do vehicle repairs from the hail damage. So we know that some of that's going to carry over, but that's why we picked a more conservative number of 4.5%, just looking at right now where we are, and it's still a little bit sluggish. I would always rather come in a little low and get extra than to come in high and then maybe have to cut something. We do have fund balance to cover any shortfalls we would have. So if we did have a recession or something that hit during 2019, we do have fund balance to cover that. And then we always look at 5 years out for the recovery of that. But that's why we picked 4.5%, just to try to be a little bit more conservative. And bless you. And we've in the past, as you can see from 2013, we've come in historically higher than that. We were right just a little bit above 4.5% in 2013.
Okay, thank you. The key to me is, for me, and you said it, so I appreciate it, is because we do know that we have a little bit of a sluggish situation here in the sales tax receipts, and you have that consideration baked into the 4.5%.
Right.
So, okay, thank you.
This is our reserve strategy. We established this on the 2017 roadmap. During that roadmap, we were going to put some funds, what we thought was going to be unanticipated revenue from 2017 into 2018. It did come in lower than we anticipated. You can see the $464,000 there, so we've made that adjustment here. And then for 2019, we anticipate underspending from 2018 to be about $330,000. Again, we're being a little bit conservative there. We also have, I'll get to this on a future chart, but we've got a reserve in our roadmap for if we have a TABOR refund situation. If it ends up that we do not have that, then we will put that into reserve. So that would add a little bit, and then we go back to our regular, how we've budgeted, how we started budgeting for the reserve strategy in 2017 of about $1,250,000 of underspending and around $1 million of, of unanticipated revenue. So you can see how our emergency reserve funding is growing here. And we do have other reserves besides this, but this is just if we had a fire, a flood, something like that, that would happen.
Commissioner Littleton?
Right, thanks. And I really appreciate that. I think it's something that this board has been very aggressive about, and rightfully so when we look at, what other counties are having to pay for cyber attacks, I think, in addition to fires and floods, the other things that we can't control. So I think this is a really good strategic move on our behalf, rather than being caught with no funding to mitigate problems to continue serving citizens.
Right.
Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Thank you. And I know that, we've discussed reserves several times in past budget hearings, and I'm appreciative of the fact that we are building this reserve. Perhaps it's a little slower than I had wanted, but it's better to have something at least a little bit now and through the process of growth. And the one thing that I note that I think is very important, if we were to have another disaster, another fire, this will give us a little bit of leeway so that we can immediately get authorized overtime for law enforcement and public safety folks and whatever else we've got to get going until we get to a process of reimbursement with whatever that may be from the state or grants or whatever. And I think that's really important to have this reserve for those kinds of functions. So I'm glad we've got it.
Our next steps, the final direction on the budget is, of course, today. After you give the final direction, then our staff will take their next 3 weeks. We'll prepare all of the required budget documents. There's numerous documents. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes reconciliations that are done. There's state submittal requirements to do. And then we have the 3 resolutions that will be presented to you on November 29th. That will be the original adopted budget, the mill levy resolution, and then the transfer resolution. Another reference sheet for you for the roadmap is this is the adjustments to minimum after the updated salary survey. So these are the same numbers you saw on October 18th that I presented. If you wanted to adjust any of these items up or down by any percentages, we did put in what a 0.25% change would be, so we could quickly make that calculation on the spreadsheet. This is another item for your reference. This is all of the items that were submitted originally. The first 2 columns is the total ongoing, and then the one-time needs. The total submitted was $31.6 million. That's the 3rd column. The blue column is what is included in the roadmap.
Questioner, Commissioner Littleton?
Thanks. Sorry, just because I know we have a lot of folks that are here new today that haven't been in on the process, and maybe some people listening online. As we're talking about budget, if you could go back one slide, if you could just talk just a little bit about when people see, or citizens may see, almost $4 million between a minimum adjustment and a cost of living allocation. Can you tell us a little bit, how did we derive or come to a minimum adjustment for salaries, and what does that mean? It's not like everybody's making a lot more. Let us know what that looks like in our county.
Yeah, there was a survey done for all of, Mountain States Employers Council did a survey for us back in 2014, 15. That was the original survey that was done. At that time, we had we made sure that staff was at the minimum of the range for the job functions that they were performing. So we had a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum. Well, at that time of the salary survey, we knew that those were 2014, 2015 numbers. So in the last few years, we've been trying to get them to the minimum of that, or to the midpoint of that old range, thinking that would be the new minimum, which that has been successful. So after we've done the updated survey, we only have, how many staff was it? 74. Like 174 staff that actually fell below the new minimum. That'll be the new 2019 minimum. So that's what the first 414,000 is. It's just some staff maybe were, $1,000 annual under that, or 2,000. So then that gets them to the minimum. Then the next item is just a 2% cost of living adjustment that we always try to give staff some type of a pay increase. And then the third item, the equity increases, that would be for any, high performers, longevity. That would be the department's discretion on that. So then that gets us to the total of the 3.9.
Okay, and just to clarify that, how many employees do we have within El Paso County?
How many employees do we have?
Employees, yes.
Yeah, it's 2,500.
Okay, 2,500, more service-oriented. And this goes back to also employee value, employee retention.
Right.
Because there is a cost in paying folks so little that they go work for any one of the other 10 counties that are surrounding us, or somewhere else, just to make a minimal amount more than living here in El Paso County. So, and the cost of retraining people, getting people in that are up to speed, far exceeds what the minimum amount that they may get, whether it's $100 a year or $300 a year. It's worth it to show value to our employees, to let them know that they matter to us and we want to keep them around for a long time.
Yes, that's right. And then here's the roadmap where we are now. And so included in the roadmap is the $14.8 million. That's in the third column, the blue column down here. We did find some other funding sources to help cover some of these critical needs requests. So that was $1,087,000, almost $88,000. That we found some other sources to cover these, so that the general fund, your discretionary funding, did not have to cover it. So then other items, what we have deferred into future years is this last column, the $15.7 million. And that would be needs that are from 2020 out, that we would need to cover those. This is the updated financial roadmap. All of the numbers down through here are the same numbers that you saw on October 18th after all of the presentations from the departments and offices. We've revised the revenue numbers a little bit, as I discussed earlier, and then I still have this estimated Tabor overage here. On that number, we are allowed, if there is a Tabor overage, we're allowed to deduct the cost of an election from that. And an election cost is usually around $350,000, $400,000. So right now, if we stay where we are, there actually we would not have to request, we would not have to do a refund, because it would cost more to do the refund than we have to refund. So that's the number there that I could put into the reserve. If it's higher than that, say if it was $700,000, then we still have this amount reserved in here for a potential additional overage. We don't think it's going to be that high. We think that it's going to end up pretty close to this number here. And then now we can go to the spreadsheet. So any changes you would like to make, we could insert it into the spreadsheet and make any adjustments on that.
But before we begin, for people that are watching this process, what is the number as far as the dollar threshold that we have to be able to allocate what essentially the horse trading that's going to occur up here, so people can follow that? And then what is the recommended amount? Because
As you can see on the 5-year forecast, when you go all the way out to year 5, because of how we've allocated funding up in the, go back up to the roads, because we're being very aggressive in getting the roads funded. We've got $7 million, and then adding another $500,000 in 2020, and then another $1 million in 2021, and then what was $3.2 million in 2022. So that's where we're trying to get everything we can into roads. So in the number down here, then every time we increase it in roads, then we're staying around $1 million down here at the bottom. We were trying to get to this increase of $12.7 million that gets us to a total of $16 million funding for roads that's already been funded in prior years. So to get to that, we wanted to try to get to that by 2023. So then that's where we increased it another $1 million out in 2023. But then that only gives you about $368,000 here. And as you've seen in the past, when you put a number in here, then it takes it out of the total for the future years. I would be comfortable of letting this go a little bit in the negative out here. You know, if you wanted to put funding in, just, would you insert a line? We can just kind of show them how something like that works. So if you put in $100,000, say here in 2019.
No numlock.
Oh,
Got it.
got it. And then if it's an ongoing change, you can see how the bottom number changes. So then that puts you 5 years out into a negative. A negative like that, I wouldn't be concerned about because revenues are going to change quite a bit in 5 years. You know, I would be comfortable with something like this. I'd be comfortable maybe with 125,000 ongoing in 2019 that would be out there, or a one-time, show them how it looks at with just a one-time.
One time would just be, here, say you funded 250,000 of something this year. It would affect it just one time as it doesn't affect every year.
Right.
Okay, 2 other questions. If you could go up to the top, and when you were talking about the roads ramp up, could you kind of explain that?
Yeah, right now, we've been ramping it up here the last couple of years. So right now we have 3.3 million ongoing that we've added in the 2017 and 2018 roads budget. So now the recommendation is to add an additional $7 million in 2019. And then that, of course, carries all the way through. Then we would increase that $7 million to 7.5, which would be another $500,000 in 2020. And then that would ramp it all the way up.
I think as far as like the dedication of those road funds, are those county roads, or that's the question that people have as we're ramping up?
Yeah, these are county road projects.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Vanderwood.
Yes, thank you. I think I'd have an interest somewhere through the course of the discussion this morning, again with the county road budgets. I'm sure there's been conversations on the staff about this, but if there's any of that that could be accelerated, and it would be something along the lines of a one-time switch, and I'll just make a number up, taking 500,000 from 2020 and moving it to 2019, it doesn't actually change the bottom line in the end state out to 2023, but it would allow us to actually deliver a little bit more to our community earlier. And the key question, the key opposing question to that is, does that put, our Department of Public Works in a place where they can't handle those revenues because they can only do so much in the course of a year? So this is the number that they can work on and they can't work on anymore. Because say if we can move a little bit to the left, it means citizens get a better road a year early. But it has to be dependent on what DPW thinks they can handle.
And Commissioner, you do have that ability as we have available funds at the end of 2019. So if you're moving just like one-time funding from one year to another, we do have that ability to do that. But Mr. Cuthbertson is here to talk to ability to spend funds.
Thank you. Commissioners, Mr. President, good morning. To answer your question, Commissioner, we have the ability to, if you make the difficult decision to give us additional funds and prioritize that, we can execute those funds as needed. As you know, we have a tremendous backlog in paving. We can accelerate our pavement maintenance program rapidly if needed.
Okay, good. And, rapidly acceleration would mean something about taking some funds maybe, and I just don't know what the number would be. I mean, there's obviously going to be some limit where you can't handle it. And I don't know if that is a number
So
you know or what have you.
I hate to sound like this, but it depends.
Yeah.
If we were to take additional funding and put it toward our paving maintenance contracts, either the ones we use with contractors or the internal work we do with chip and seal on the roadways, we can accelerate those processes. I'll just pull a number, 25, 30%, without a lot of impact. If any of those processes get to the point where we can't add to them, I could move it into gravel road maintenance, as we've discussed. There's opportunities to accelerate that as well. My goal would be that if there were additional funds that came our way in 2019, it would be to execute them in 2019. That's why I'm not talking about longer-term projects that require planning and clearances and all that sort of stuff. I would want to make an immediate impact to the citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Question? Commissioner Waller.
Yeah, and actually, it's probably more for staff, but maybe you, Scott, I don't know. So, I mean, I assume as you put the budget presentation together, you'd come up with numbers for some specific reason. So, maybe you could give us shed a little light onto why, if we can go back up to the road numbers here, why 7 million's the right amount, why you picked that for 2019 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, as we developed the roadmap, we were in 2016 when we started putting a lot of this together. This is where it fell to where we zeroed out at the bottom is basically we had our needs, then we put everything else up into roads. And then as the revenue figures are refined, then those numbers at the bottom will change. They're going up and down a little bit, they're fluctuating. So that's where we just left the roads at the same estimate that we had done back in 2015, 2016, in order to get to the goal of a total increase of 16 million by 2023.
Thank you. And just one more sort of philosophical question here. Where would we be in this road infrastructure piece had the voters not supported the ballot initiative in 2017?
We would not have been able to fund any of this.
Okay, so these would be kind of zeros going across here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions?
And just, I forgot to kind of go through the process, but this isn't a voting part here. This is just direction. So if anybody wants to add anything, I'm just going to look to the commissioners and see if I have 3 head nods to include it in there. If I don't, then we won't include it. If I get 3 or more head nods, then we will include any changes.
Okay. Lucky you. Commissioner Littleton.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the voters also for entrusting the funds to us for the public safety tax. Because if we wouldn't have had the voters that would have looked at those critical needs that we have for public safety within our community, this would also be very different numbers, because we would have to reallocate some of the services, even though they look large or minimal for parks, for forest management funds, park maintenance positions, those things that our citizens expect and enjoy within our community. I think that one of the things that citizens know within our community is that we run a very fiscally conservative county. We don't have fluff out there. And while we look at the public safety tax, there would have been millions of dollars that would have been stripped out of this immediately, because there just isn't squish room in what we have. Certainly we could go back and say, well, we don't really need 2 or 3 million or 5 million in a critical needs and or an emergency fund, but that is certainly short-sighted for us to not do something like that. So I just want to thank the citizens for passing the public safety tax, for entrusting our sheriff's office and for the county to expend those funds to have a safer community.
Okay, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so I did want to thank you for all the hard work. I know your staff has been going through a lot to get this done. And so, and a lot of what I do, I get from the feedback from the public, and the public has been very adamant about public safety and roads. And they showed that in their support of 1A. The other day, and they're continuing calls to us on roads. And so that's why those are prioritizations. And so I wanted to thank you again for all this hard work. The roadmap, the updates we've gotten, I think very good. I'm very pleased that we were able to take care of our team and our staff. One of our viable resources are the people that work for El Paso County. And so I'm happy to see that we are able to support our staff and our team as well in this roadmap and in the getting them to where they need to be in some of these salary issues. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussion here.
You have any other comments before we ring the bell and let the games begin?
No, I just wanted to bring to the attention of our budget team is sitting over here observing, so.
They look so happy.
My only other comment, Commissioners, is that we are only looking at, the approval will only be on the 2019 budget, but we obviously want to show the impacts of that through the 5 years, which is why you see the rolling 5-year forecast.
Right.
But anything we put into future years is not an agreement to put it into that year officially in a budget, because we don't set that budget this year.
Okay. I'm just going to make a general statement, and then we'll open it up to any sort of inputs here. I think that, one, it's amazing what the community, how well we run the government based on the resources that we have. And I think that the more we can do to educate people on some of the fiscal conditions that we have and compare that to the challenges that we have going forward, I think that's a very important part of the process. I also think it's important that we take a look at some of the issues that we're going to have to address. When you start thinking about jail overcrowding, how do we actually manage that? We have a huge mental health issue that we need to start really putting some resources behind. We need to be creative with regard to our sentencing and pretrial services. We need to make sure that the DA is actually prepared to be able to handle this. We're anticipating, hopefully, being able to add on a couple of new deputy district attorneys if we receive resources. So we need to start thinking about how we're going to manage these things, because they all link back to some public safety issues. So I'm going to listen and provide input as necessary, but I really want us to be able to think about some of the strategic challenges that we have, especially in the public safety area and mental health areas. So with that, I'll open up to any of the commissioners that want to begin the spreadsheet process. So quiet. Commissioner, I'll start with Commissioner Vanderwerth.
Thank you. There were some comments that I had made from the last time the budget was presented, and I believe they are, some of these are addressed to my satisfaction. I had some questions about the request for the public health, and I believe that the budget has a $150,000 number for that. Upon receiving some additional briefings from the Public Health Department, I'm accepting those numbers. So I, at this point, and I believe that number is in the budget right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, thank you very much. So, so that one I am fine with. I believe another one was neighborhood cleanups, and I believe that you have added a line. You have not.
No, this roadmap has not been updated since the last time we saw it, besides the revenue expenditures on the top. So if you would like to add something at this point, we can do that.
And I would ask Commissioner Van, can we stick with one item and see if,
Okay.
so, because
stay-
with public health, I would like to counter, and I would actually like to increase that for consideration. So right now, we have 150,000 there. I've also looked at some additional information with regard to some collaborations with the sheriff and mental health issues, and I think that their original request was probably 250,000. So I would like to have a discussion on whether or not people would be interested in increasing that, or if they wanted to just leave it at 150, but I certainly would be open to increasing that allocation.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Littleton.
Thank you, Commissioner Glenn. I would agree with that. You know, after extensive discussions and being one of the voting members on the Public Health Department, you know, certainly it has been really difficult to even meet statutory requirements with their current budget. Initially, I'll have to say I was incredulous, but after really digging deep into it and having presentations on where the funds are expended, what the return on investment is going to be, I would agree that that may be something, since they're looking at really strategic collaboration with other departments. I think that it lowers the cost from other people as well if we can all work together in a regional, very strategic, well thought out manner. So I would be willing to go up to 200 as well.
I said 250, but you can counter with
I'm
200.
sorry.
And then Commissioner Vanderwerf was
Okay,
at 150.
I was
so-
I thought I heard 200, I'm sorry, because I think originally it was 250, but I thought I heard you say 200. so-
Yeah, no, originally it was 250,
Yeah,
and I think
correct.
it got knocked down to 150.
Right.
And I'm throwing it out there that I would be open to raising it to 250. Again, I'll make the argument, when you start thinking about, and if you go back and listen to the sheriff's presentation, when over 50% of the population are dealing with mental health issues, we have got to come up with a countywide collaboration on how we're going to address these issues, because the alternative is then we have to then start thinking about a capital plan on building another jail, which I don't believe that this community wants to do. And the mental health issue is growing. So when you think about the investment, I think it's certainly worth considering. So
I would counter with 200 though. So, because I think it's one of those things, I think we need to like phase it in a little more strategically, see what the return on investment is for the first year, and then increase it from there, so.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you. I will defer to an opportunity for the other commissioners to weigh in before I respond, if they have an interest.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
I'm sure, and I am on the Board of Health, so I have seen this. I think there's a need, and it would be good. I think maybe the gradual phase-in, maybe over 2 years. So I would be, right now, I think the 200,000 sounds good. I can maybe be convinced of a little bit more, but I think we have not gotten enough information or funding to the Department of Health. And so right now, since our other Board of Health member is at 200, I think maybe a phase-in over 2 years, but I can perhaps be convinced pending other discussion.
Commissioner Waller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess before I'm there, just a little bit more information on how this is going to work. So if you could we plug in that line 42, 250 there, and let's see what that does to the bottom line elsewhere.
And just for clarification, when you're saying this number, it's just the one-time increase for
That was my next question.
2019, or is it?
And then
bumping
300
the whole
the
schedule
subsequent
up?
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was kind of my question to Commissioner Glenn. I mean, you kind of
Because,
hit
yeah, do we
maybe
also
250
increase-
this year, but still go on with the 300, 450, 600 million.
Or increase
in
it
subsequent years.
$100,000 every year to accelerate the full funding.
Is that right? Commissioner Littleton.
Well, I think what the ultimate end goal was $1 million. So if we do the 200, did you say 200 or 250 right now? You wanted to plug
250 in there
plug in
right
250
now.
just for consideration. To get to the $1 million, how does that,
Yeah, if you look at the bottom, it doesn't move the dial a whole lot
If
in
we do
terms
it,
of.
if we accelerate each year, though, then that 300,000 would become 400,000
Well-
in 2020.
And that was the question
And
I
then-
had.
Yeah.
And that's where I
Okay.
wanted to clarify.
And we
so
have.
how does it increase that much every year to just get to $1 million if we're initially doing 250? Doesn't each year then, isn't it reduced to get to?
Yeah, because it's
Oh.
ongoing.
You want $1 million per year ongoing, gotcha. Okay. Gotcha, yeah,
I think we're going to get some help.
okay.
Plus, we have representative from the
Yeah,
public
the
health there,
original
too.
request was 250, and then 400, 600, 800, $1 million.
Gotcha.
How about this? What if we plug 200 in there now, go through the rest of our,
Come back.
the rest of our, and if we feel that there's extra there, we'll come back and plug the extra 50,000 in.
Okay.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. And to the point of going above 150K, and to the point that you mentioned, Mr. President, about pretrial services, the other challenges we have with the jail, about number of inmates and other things we need to do. One of my other topics that I am interested in discussing today is pretrial services. So since we are talking about an inflection between these two, maybe it would be worthwhile to have a bit of a conversation about what is in the budget presently with regard to pretrial services, whether or not there could be more funds accepted there that would be in a mental health environment, or if there's a ramp-up requirement to get there, these kinds of questions, because we're talking about an inflection of these two areas. So maybe before we make any final head nod commitment to this part, let's maybe talk about the pretrial services and what we've got going on right now. If there is to be an increase over the 150, I think a component about how to support the jail and keep us out of, some near future gigantic investment requirement, that there's a reasonable conversation about that.
I think what would be helpful, Tim Wilkin is here. If we, based on your current allocation, if we actually increase that, what would that money be used for? We might be able to assist in that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Walker, Director of Community Services, El Paso County. Just a bit of background for you that in 2018, we agreed on a $400,000 increase to pretrial services. We understood it would take us some time to hire the staff, so we went with $300,000 in 18 and hopefully additional $100,000 in 19 to make that staff whole. And so we went from 2 staff members to 9 staff members, and we have 7 of those hired. We have a total of 7. We have 2 openings currently at this point. My thinking, talking to our pretrial services staff, is we really have 2 different components of pretrial. We have the assessment group, and then we have the case management group. At this point, they would recommend 1 additional staff member in case management and 1 additional staff member in assessment over the 5-year plan that we have here. My general reaction is that we're still gelling at this point, going from 2 staff members to 9 staff members at this point. I think if we could have some additional funding within the 5-year plan, I think that would be very helpful. I'm not sure that it's absolutely critical in 2019, since we did have that dramatic increase in 18 into 19 as well. So, but showing some additional funding in the 5-year plan would be quite helpful for pretrials. We want to continue to grow that. I've showed you the other Front Range counties and where we're at. We're still at the bottom, but we're growing, and so having a couple additional staff members during that 5-year plan would be quite helpful, I think.
Okay, good, thank you.
Sure.
Did that help?
It does. I think there's perhaps a balance somewhere in the middle there that maybe we can work with. I'm not quite sure what the number needs to be for that balance, but I think it is a valid point that you've made, Mr. President, about doing what we can in pretrial services, or any other function for that matter, to deal with effectively funding our jail so that we don't have to get to that big investment later.
I guess one question, I'm sorry, Tim. What would be the cost of the additional staff members so that we could build that into the...
Staff was estimating about $90,000 for the 2 staff members and about $10,000 for startup costs, for a total of $100,000.
Okay. Somewhere, okay.
FICA, but not better.
Okay, so I just did a quick, try not to do math in public calculation, and I'm coming up with about $120,000, because you do need to include the benefits when we reallocate that funding.
Okay.
Mr. President, might?
Continue, please.
So if that were to be used for hiring, say, 1 or 2 more staff members, then would we have a yearly increase of a similar amount? So it wouldn't be just 19, it would be 20 and 21 and so forth, right?
Correct. So if we added the full $120,000 into 2020, then it flows all the way across.
Right. So really, when we're talking about something like that at this time, over the course of 5 years, it's really 500,000 plus.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think our district attorney has some input too.
Oh, are we talking still pretrial services? Cool. Let me make sure I'm not changing.
He might have some input into that.
Dan May, District Attorney. Just to let you know, statewide and even nationwide, there's a discussion about bond reform. I'm anticipating there are a number of, well, there's a fairly set plan in place for some sort of bond reform next year in our legislature. One of the discussions that's being made, though, is that in order to have that, you have to have a vibrant pretrial services. CDAC right now, I believe, is taking the position that we should not have a bond reform unless the state is going to be help fund pretrial services across the state. Because without that element, the rest of their bond plan, quite frankly, will probably fail. So I might suggest that you see, I don't know if CCI, is that the correct, has taken a position. It might be something you might want to talk to them about. That, again, if they're going to put in the bond reform, which particularly with the election change we had, I think is most likely coming, that there ought to be a requirement of then the state also helping fund the pretrial services. So I guess I'm saying it may be a little bit early to put in funding until we see what the state's going to do, see what their position is on that. I know it's one that I'll be advocating for and CDAC will be advocating for, that the state has an obligation if it's going to change with these major bond reforms. We're going to go to sort of that bond or no bond, and they're moving towards eliminating cash bonds altogether, that in that realm that they then need to really have a good pretrial services across the state to say who should get a bond and who should not.
And I certainly agree with that. I'm familiar with that, and I do believe it might be wise to wait on that until we figure out what is going to happen, and then put pressure on the state agency to appropriately make sure that they send us some funding with that. So that might impact our ability to fund that going forward. So that is a very good recommendation.
It'll be a major change. It actually will be required to put on the ballot because it requires a constitutional change by the voters also. So that's sort of where we're heading right now.
Okay. Keep going.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, it's on a completely different topic. If you might be willing, I am interested in a quick rest break.
I was going to give you one in 5 minutes.
Okay,
But we'll
very
do
good.
that now. Since he asked in public, we'll take a quick recess.
Thank you.
Sorry, what line?